I have been a judge for over 40 years. I have watched people lie to my face with a steadiness that would impress a professional actor. I have watched people tell the truth in ways that cost them everything. And I have learned that the plain, unadorned truth, spoken by someone with nothing left to hide behind, is always the most powerful thing in any room. I have cried exactly 3 times in this courtroom. The first time was when a mother told me what happened to her child. The second time I will keep to myself. And the third time was on a cold October morning when an 84-year-old man in a brown suit and polished shoes stood before me for a parking ticket and told me something he had never told another living soul in 47 years. By the time he finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. Not the bailiff, not my clerk, not the people who had come in for their own cases and found themselves unable to leave. The case file was as simple as they come. Case number 2023-CV9914, a parking violation. The defendant was Harold Eugene Porter, age 84. Citation issued outside the Providence Veterans Affairs Medical Center at 6:22 in the morning. He had parked in a fire lane for 1 hour and 11 minutes. Fine, $85 plus court costs. I read it in 45 seconds. I figured this would take 10 minutes. Harold would explain himself. I would hear him out, and we would all move on with our day. I have been wrong before. I have never been more wrong. When Harold walked into my courtroom, I noticed him immediately. He moved with the careful deliberateness of a man who has learned that his body no longer does things automatically. Every step considered, the weight of age in every joint. His cane had been worn smooth at the handle from years of use. His suit was brown and old, the kind that had been good once and was now simply clean. His tie was dark burgundy, knotted with military precision, and his shoes. This is the detail I keep coming back to. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine despite the deep cracks in the leather. This was a man who could not afford new shoes, but refused to stop taking care of the ones he had. That told me something about Harold Porter before he said a single word. He sat in the gallery with his hands resting on his cane and waited. He did not look around the way nervous people do. He just sat still, the way men from that generation sit when they have learned that patience is not a choice. When I called his case, he stood slowly and made his way to the front. He looked up at me with eyes that were pale blue and very tired. Not tired from the morning, tired from a long time. "Mr. Porter," I said, "you were parked in a fire lane outside the VA hospital for 1 hour and 11 minutes at 6 in the morning. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Can you tell me why the fire lane?" "There were available spots in the main lot." Harold looked down at his hands for a moment. Just a moment. Then, "I was visiting someone, Your Honor. I needed to be close. I needed to be able to get inside quickly." "Were you expecting an emergency?" "I was expecting," he said quietly, "that I might not have very much time." I set down my pen. Something in those words stopped me. I have been doing this long enough to know when an answer is hiding something larger than itself. Harold Porter's answer was hiding something enormous. "Tell me about who you were visiting," I said. His jaw tightened for just a second. "His name was Corporal Raymond DeLuca. He was 83 years old. He passed away 4 hours after I left the hospital that morning." The courtroom went still. "I'm sorry," I said. "Was Corporal DeLuca a friend?" Harold was quiet for a long moment. "He was more than a friend, Your Honor. He was the man who saved my life." I waited. "We served together. United States Army, 1st Cavalry Division, Vietnam, 1966 to 1968. And he saved your life during that service." "Yes, Your Honor, March 4th, 1967, near Bang Sun. We were on a reconnaissance patrol. 6 men. We walked into an ambush. An RPG hit the vehicle. I was thrown clear, but I was on fire. My jacket had caught. Raymond ran back through the firefight. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look for cover first. He just ran directly back toward me while bullets were hitting the ground all around him. He put me out with his own hands." Harold stopped. He looked at his own hands resting on the cane, burned both his palms doing it. Then he picked me up and carried me 200 yards to the extraction point, under fire the entire way. I was screaming. My leg was hurt in the blast, and every step he took felt like it was tearing something. But he didn't stop. He didn't put me down. He got me to the extraction point, and he didn't leave until the medics had me. I weighed 190 pounds. Raymond weighed maybe 160. No one in the courtroom moved. He was awarded the Bronze Star for that action, Harold said. I was medically evacuated. By the time I got back stateside, Raymond had already rotated home. We lost touch. You lost touch, I said slowly. After he saved your life? Yes, Your Honor. For how long? Harold looked at me. 47 years, Your Honor. He said it plainly. The way you say something that has been true for so long, it has stopped feeling like anything at all. I leaned forward. Mr. Porter, why? You were in the same unit. You had his information. Why 47 years? Harold closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them, something had shifted in his face. Something that had been behind a door for a very long time had finally come through it. Because I was ashamed, Your Honor. Ashamed of what? Of needing to be saved. He said it quietly, without drama, the way people say things that have cost them so much they have long since stopped performing the pain. I was 24 years old. I was a soldier. I thought soldiers were supposed to be the ones doing the saving. I couldn't look Raymond in the eye after that day. I couldn't stand the way the other men looked at me, with that particular gentleness people have for someone who almost died, like you were already a little bit gone. He paused. I told myself I would reach out when I felt ready, when I had processed it, when I felt like enough of a man to say thank you to the man who made me one. He stopped. I was never ready. 47 years passed, and I was never ready. Something tightened in my chest that I have only felt a handful of times in 4 decades. Not pity, something more than pity. The recognition of a burden so quietly carried for so long that it had become part of the shape of a person. How did you find out he was at the hospital, I asked. His obituary, Your Honor. The Providence Journal ran it 3 days early by mistake. It said he was in hospice care at the VA, not expected to last the week. Harold reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a folded piece of newsprint, worn soft at the creases from being handled many times. I read it on a Tuesday evening. I drove to the hospital Wednesday morning before sunrise because I was afraid that if I waited until a reasonable hour, I would talk myself out of going. He looked at the paper in his hands. I have been talking myself out of going for 47 years. I was not going to do it one more time. And you saw him. I saw him. His voice broke slightly on those 3 words. He pulled it back with the precision of a man who has had long practice at this. Room 211. He was in a bed by the window. Small. Raymond had always been a big man, broad through the shoulders, strong hands. The cancer had taken most of him, but his eyes were exactly the same. Harold stopped, breathed. I stood at the foot of his bed and I said, Raymond, it's Harold Porter, 1st Cav, 1967. And he looked at me, and he smiled. The woman in the 2nd row pressed her hand over her mouth. I walked to his bedside, Harold continued, and I said the words I should have said 56 years earlier. I said, Raymond, I came to tell you thank you. Thank you for coming back for me when you didn't have to. Thank you for burning your hands so I could go home. Thank you for not leaving me there. Thank you for the 57 years I have lived since that morning. Years I would not have had without you. I have grandchildren, Raymond, 4 of them. I have a son who is a doctor and a daughter who teaches school. I got to walk my daughter down the aisle. I got to hold my grandchildren when they were born. I got to have a long and full life, and every single day of it belongs to you. Harold had to stop. The courtroom let him. Nobody moved. Do you know what Raymond said to me, Your Honor? I shook my head. I could not speak. He said, "Harold, I knew you would come. I always knew. I just didn't know when." Harold's voice dropped until I had to lean forward to catch it. He said he had thought about me often over the years. He always hoped I had a good life. He said he never held the silence against me because he understood what war does to young men, how shame and gratitude can get tangled into something a person doesn't know how to put down. Harold looked at me. He said he was glad I made it home. I could not look at the citation sitting in front of me. "How long did you stay?" I asked. 1 hour and 11 minutes, Your Honor. I know because the ticket told me. A very small, very sad smile. 1 minute for every year I waited. I didn't plan it that way. It's just how long it took to say what needed to be said. The nurse came in and said he needed to rest. I leaned close and I said, "Raymond, you are the bravest man I have ever known. You are my hero, and I will make sure the world knows what you did." He squeezed my hand. He said, and these were the last words he said to me. He said, "Harold, I was just a soldier doing what soldiers do." Then he closed his eyes. Harold reached into his jacket and produced a photograph, faded, creased down the middle from decades of folding and unfolding. 2 young men in army uniforms, arms around each other's shoulders, squinting into sunlight somewhere very far away. They looked so young I could barely connect them to the old man standing before me. That's Raymond and me, February 1967, 6 weeks before the ambush. We were 24 years old. He put the photograph back against his heart. Raymond passed away that evening, 4 hours after I left. The hospital called me at home. The nurse said he went peacefully. She said he seemed lighter after my visit. She said the last thing he said before he went to sleep for the final time was my name. Harold's voice was almost gone. She said he said, "Harold came. Harold finally came." I looked at Harold Porter, this 84-year-old man in his worn brown suit and his cracked, polished shoes, who had driven to a hospital before sunrise to put down a weight he had carried for longer than most people have been alive. And I picked up the citation. "Mr. Porter," I said, "I have been on this bench for 40 years. In that time, I have learned that honor is not the absence of fear or shame. Honor is what you do despite those things. You drove to that hospital before the sun came up because you refused to let Raymond DeLuca die without knowing that his courage mattered, that the life he saved was a life worth saving." I looked at him. "This parking ticket is dismissed. The fine is vacated. Case closed." Harold's legs buckled slightly. He caught himself on the cane. My bailiff, Officer Carlos Reyes, a former Marine, moved to steady him without being asked. "Your Honor," Harold said softly, "I broke the rule. I should pay." "You have already paid, Mr. Porter. You paid with 47 years of carrying something you were never supposed to carry alone. Consider your account settled." He was quiet for a moment. Then he straightened, that old military posture coming back one last time, and he saluted me. A perfect, steady salute. I stood up from my bench and returned it, not because protocol required it, because Raymond DeLuca deserved it. 3 weeks later, I worked with Harold and with Raymond's family to do something I had never done in 40 years on this bench. We reached out to the veterans organizations, to the city, to the VA Medical Center, and we reached out to Raymond's daughter, Carol DeLuca Walsh, 57 years old, who had grown up hearing her father speak of the war with the careful vagueness of men who had seen things they didn't want to pass on. She knew he was a Bronze Star recipient. She did not know the full story of March 4th, 1967. She did not know Harold's name. When I called her, she was silent for a long time. Then, he talked about that day once, just once. He said there was a man he had to go back for. He never said the name. She paused, but I always had the feeling he thought about him. On Veterans Day, the city of Providence held a ceremony at the VA Medical Center. A plaque was mounted near the main entrance, just inside the doors Harold had walked through before sunrise that September morning. It read, in memory of Corporal Raymond DeLuca, United States Army, 1st Cavalry Division, 1943 to 2023, Bronze Star recipient. He ran back into the fire so that others could go home. Over 150 people attended, veterans from every branch, Raymond's family, Harold's family, including his 4 grandchildren, the youngest, 7 years old, standing perfectly still during the whole ceremony, the way children do when they understand something important is happening, even if they cannot name it. Harold spoke. He stood at the podium with his cane and his brown suit and his polished shoes, and he read from a letter he had written to Raymond. He apologized for the 47 years of silence. He described March 4th, 1967, in more detail than he had ever spoken of it aloud. The RPG, the fire, the sound of Raymond running back when every instinct would have said, "Run the other way." He said, "I have spent 57 years trying to live in a way that was worth what you did for me. I don't know if I succeeded, but I want you to know that I tried. Every single day, I tried." By the time he finished, there was not a dry eye in that crowd. Carol walked to the podium and held Harold for a long time. She told him that in her father's final years, she had sometimes caught him looking out windows with an expression she could never interpret. She understood it now. She said, "He was waiting for you, and you came. Thank you for coming." After the ceremony, Harold found me in the crowd and took both of my hands in his. His grip was stronger than I expected. He said, "Your Honor, you could have dismissed the ticket quietly and sent me home. Instead, you listened, and because of that, Raymond's grandchildren will grow up knowing who their grandfather was." He stopped. "I can't thank you for that the way it deserves." I told him what I know to be true after 40 years on this bench, that he had done it himself, that all I did was listen, and that listening, really listening, without rushing, without filling the silence before it is ready to be filled, is sometimes the most powerful thing one person can do for another. He nodded. Then, Raymond told me in that hospital room that he wasn't afraid to die because he knew he had done one thing that truly mattered. I asked him what. He said, "I gave someone their life back." He said every morning he woke up, he thought, "Somewhere, Harold is waking up too, because of me." He looked at me with those pale, tired eyes. "I want that, Your Honor. I want to know I did one thing that truly mattered." He squeezed my hands. I think maybe I finally did. After the crowd had thinned, Harold's granddaughter, 11 years old, came and stood beside me quietly for a moment. Then she said, "My grandpa cried on the way home from that parking ticket court. He never cries." She thought about it for a second. "I think he put something down. 11 years old. She had it exactly right." Somewhere in your life, there is a Raymond DeLuca, someone who ran back into the fire for you, someone who paid a price on your behalf that you have never fully acknowledged, someone who is waiting, maybe without knowing they are waiting, to hear the 2 words that Harold Porter drove to a hospital before sunrise to say. Don't wait 47 years. Don't let time make the decision for you. Make the call. Write the letter. Drive before sunrise if you have to. Because Harold taught me it is never too late, but he also taught me that almost too late is a gift not everyone receives. Raymond heard it. Not everyone does. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel because these are the stories that matter. And leave me a comment with the name of your Raymond DeLuca. Honor them right here, right now, because they deserve to know.